This is James Mathers at NAB 2025 for the Digital Cinema Society. I'm here at the ARRI booth, and my friend Art Adams is going to tell us about some new developments with ARRI lenses. Ensō lenses.
Ensō lenses. So the idea behind Ensō is that Ensō relates to creative flow, being lost in the moment, not having to worry about much, and that was the idea with these lenses. Now, the first time I shot with these, I had a 150 millimeter prototype, and I was shooting down a river in Germany, and there was a couple having a picnic on a bank, and it was a very nice little, wide shot. And then I panned over to a tree at close focus and framed a leaf that big. And that's when we kind of started thinking about the whole Ensō thing, because you can go from infinity to this, a shot this wide on 12 of the 14 lenses and not have to do anything other than focus. So that was the goal. We achieved it. They're sort of like ultra primes are to master primes in terms of relating to signatures. So if the signatures are the modern equivalent of a master prime, then Ensōs are the modern equivalent of an ultra prime. We wanted to kind of keep some of the character, but also knock it down a bit, give it its own flavor, but also make it less expensive, because these are aimed at people who buy their own lenses. Rental houses will buy them. These will intercut with signatures fairly well. They're exactly the same color, but they do have their own flavor and they are less expensive. So right now we've got the 75 on and we are at close focus. Now, we don't talk about close focus in terms of inches. Instead of measuring close focus in distance, which you can certainly do, magnification is much more accurate. So in this case, the lens is set to 1:4 magnification. That means that I'm getting a frame that's 4 times the width of the sensor wide, and 12 of the 14 lenses will do this.
So the close focus is in magnification is actually on the lens barrel?
Just right here next to the close focus distance. The distance will change for every lens, but the magnification will not. And it's different from lens to lens in the real world, because the entrance pupil determines the center of perspective of a lens. So if a lens is as long, if it's as long as an Ensō, but the entrance pupil is at the back, close focus can be right in front of it, and you'll get a nice image. But if the entrance pupil is closer to the front, the image will be much tighter. So that entrance pupil makes all the difference, and the distance doesn't tell you the full story, but magnification does. 12 of these lenses will do 1:4, and that's what we want everyone to understand, is you can get the same thing across all 12 of those.
You said there's 14 lenses altogether. What's the range?
10.5 to 250. The 250 comes with a 1.4 times extender and a 2 times extender, so you get a 250, a 350, and a 500.
Wow. Cool.
And I've shot tests with the prototype, and they are really nice. I've never seen an extender do this kind of work. But it's dedicated. You can only use those with that lens. So let me show you the new Ensō Vintage Elements. So they're a variation on our impression filters for the signature primes. And they're meant to introduce vintage lens effects. They're a little bit different for these lenses because the stop is a little deeper. So we have to work a little harder to get the same effect. And also the mounting point for the filters on the lenses. On the signatures, it's on the lens mount. We changed that on the Ensō, so they're now actually on the back of the lens. And if you shim the lens mount, the relationship of the optic and the lens stays together. They don't change. And that allows us to do a bit more. So let me pop one on. They look really good on long lenses if you're shooting close-ups. I find that we find the best results for demos on wider lenses because you get more interesting things happening at the edge of the frame. So here's the 32. So I'll just go to close focus. Okay. So they're very natural looking, like signatures. They have a little more contrast snap to them. There's a little bit more astigmatism at the edge, so we'll see that in a minute because I'll bring that out with one of the filters. They're a little bit of a rougher look, which I think is fine. It's a distinct look, and it separates them from signature primes. So if I go through the focus range, the bokeh is still very soft. The highlights have a slightly harder edge than signatures. The teardrop shape isn't as perfect when we go out of focus. It's got a little bit longer edge, and that's related to the astigmatism. But it's still very, very, very smooth. The breathing is minimal. So for example, I always stop down to show breathing because if you're wide open, that may be breathing like crazy, but I couldn't tell. So I always stop down, And you can see all the way through the range, there's really not much happening. The size isn't changing at all. So now, if we want to make this look like, say, a 1950s portrait lens, that would be the 350 positive. So it's based on a 3.5 positive diopter, but there's a lot more going on. And we took customer feedback from the impressions where customers said, the center is a little too soft and the edges aren't soft enough. So now the centers are sharper and the edges go pretty crazy. It's actually a really nice look.
You can change it. You just drop a filter into the rear element.
Exactly. I should show you what I'm actually doing. So this is the strongest positive. There's actually two lighter ones. And if I line this witness mark up with the witness mark on the filter, I get lens data. So it'll tell me exactly which optic is in there, and it'll go follow the footage all the way through post. And actually when I put it in there, you'll see up here 350p. So we're always about making sure you know what's going on, and you can't see behind the lens. So this is the equivalent of a behind the lens filter tag for anyone who's watching a monitor. So with this one, it's very soft. You can see at the point of focus there's a little bit of a glow. On a face, that's really nice. It's very glamorous. And this is actually the same mechanism that you would see in a portrait lens. It's undercorrected spherical aberration. Now, if we look at the background, the bokeh is very, 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 very soft. And if we look at the highlights back there, they've got a bit of an arrowhead shape, and that's a combination of coma and astigmatism. And it's similar to what happens in the impression filters. On these, it's a little bit more extreme, but I think that's okay because these lenses are a little funkier. But generally, overall, it's a really pleasing look, and it's great on people's faces. Now, I always recommend using the strongest filter on a close-up. On a wide shot, it can be a little overwhelming. Kind of like using a heavy diffusion on a close-up where it may work, but then you go to a wide shot and it's just murk. You want to back off a little bit. That's my recommendation, but whatever works for you is perfect. If I want to turn this now to look like almost like an ultra prime, I can swap out to a negative. So I've got a negative optic here, and so now the effect is going to be very different. At the point of focus, it's still soft, but there's a lot less glow to it. So this reminds me of if I was using a black pro mist, but there was no halation, is the way it kind of feels, or like a black net, but there's no halation to it. And you can see on the plant now, there's a lot of texture in those leaves. So that's overcorrected spherical aberration. And it tends to look sharper at the point of focus if you're not working with a lens with A-spheres. Now, we probably are here in at least some of these, but I think in vintage lenses, when they didn't have A-spheres, they erred on this side because it made lenses look sharper. And that's why you see this look in a lot of older lenses, especially on wider focal lengths.
Well, it's great to have the different choices. You can make it look like a vintage for one shot and a regular lens on the next shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the look is significantly different. You can see the bokeh in the window now it's a donut bokeh, hot outer edge. We got a little bit of stretching going on. So it's a significantly different look.
So a net or a filter, that would cover the entire picture area, but this can affect the center differently than the sides.
It's an actual optical element, so it's going to affect the center differently from the sides, and you're going to have different effects depending on where something is in the relation to the point of focus. Whereas a diffusion filter is going to just do the same thing just all the way across the frame.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Art.
You're very welcome. Thank you.